Why are you ruining my life? Why should I'm not ruining your life. I'm trying to solve a homicide, a double homicide.
Some teens shatter all expectations with cold-blooded violence. In this video, we reveal the chilling reactions of teen killers as they face the consequences of their actions. From anger and cold indifference, their courtroom moments will leave you speechless. One haunting case is Daniel Marsh, whose brutal murder of an elderly couple shocked the nation. Let's begin.
Go chill with him at his crib alone, drink, smoke, and play it off.
Kill him. Bring duffel bag, wear gloves, clean up mess, wear bags on shoes.
In November 2016, the body of 16-year-old Lee Paulino was found by a dog walker along the banks of a river in Massachusetts. His head and his hands had been completely severed from his body. He was also found with more than 70 stabs in his body. His body was in such bad shape that medical examiners could not tell whether these stabs and the beheading had occurred before or after he was murdered. 15-year-old Matthew Borges was one of Paulino's friends. He was soon questioned about his role in the murder. Overwhelming evidence led him to be arrested and charged with the first-degree murder of the 16-year-old. According to the investigation, the reason this gruesome murder occurred was jealousy. According to classmates, even though Borges was a quiet kid, he had a short fuse and got into a lot of fights, probably because of his troubled family life. In school, Borges dated a girl named Leilani de Jesus, who described him as possessive in the 9 months they were together. The two of them were friends with Paulino. One day, Borges saw de Jesus and Paulino having lunch together and got jealous. He caused a scene and had to be removed from the hall. Because of this, Borges accused de Jesus of cheating, even though she did nothing of the sort. In their second year of high school, it seemed that Borges had moved on because he started talking to a girl named Stephanie Soriano. She was also friends with Paulino. This made him even more jealous, and he threatened to kill any guy who got close to Soriano. In a text, Borges told her, "I think of killing someone and I smirk. I like the sound of it, the idea of causing pain." Soriano tried to prevent him from doing anything crazy. However, this wouldn't last long because of the horrible incident that would happen. A month before Paulino went missing, Borges threatened murder in a Facebook post. He wrote, "Guys, I'm gonna kill someone on Halloween. I'm not lying. So if you hear someone dead on the news, we know I just want to say that y'all expletives gonna look at me differently." On November 18, 2016, Paulino went missing and his body was found in a gruesome state 2 weeks later. According to testimony, Borges lured Paulino out of the house while his 4 other friends robbed his home of electronics and clothes. One of Borges' collaborators said that Borges told him that he stabbed Paulino and beheaded him. When Matthew Borges expressed no emotion that Paulino was missing, the people around him became suspicious. After a few days, Borges texted Soriano and told her to delete all their conversations. This would later be used as evidence against him in court. When Borges was asked if he killed Paulino, Borges lied and said no. But because of the witness testimony, Borges was charged with his murder. He was eventually tried as an adult in 2019 when he was already 18 years old. In court, the person who saw the victim's body testified.
As I approached, I got closer, I saw her really sniffing at a particular area, so I pulled her back, and when I looked, kind of second-guessed myself, I thought I saw a dead body, but I wasn't too sure.
Paulino's hands were never found, but his head was found wrapped in a plastic shopping bag. At trial, a disturbing entry from Borges' journal was read to the people.
Go chill with him at his crib alone, drink, smoke, and play it off.
Kill him. Bring duffel bag, wear gloves, clean up mess, wear bags on shoes.
During the court proceedings, Matthew Borges showed no emotion. Paulino's mother addressed the court in tears and talked about how hard the murder of her son hit her family.
On November 18, 2016, our world was irreversibly changed when Limano was taken from us.
During all of this, Matthew Borges remained stoic and showed no remorse or emotions, even while his sentence was read. When he was also asked if he wished to address the court, he answered in the negative. Because he was a minor when he committed the crime, he was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years. This was the maximum sentence that could be given to him. Following Jesse Osborne's chilling story, we turn to Daniel Marsh, a teenager whose dark impulses shattered the peace of a California neighborhood.
First look at the 16-year-old accused of murdering an elderly couple in Davis. Prosecutors say the man there with the tie, Daniel Marsh, hid in the couple's home.
Ever since Daniel Marsh was 10 years old, he thought of nothing else but killing people. He was fascinated by the idea of killing people and causing them pain. This may have been because his parents had gone through a divorce after his mother had an affair with Marsh's former female teacher. Since then, he thought of torturing his mother's partner before slitting her throat or strangling her. He also started dreaming of killing more people. By age 14, he started using alcohol and marijuana. All of these contributed to his diagnosis. He was diagnosed with depression and anxiety, manic depressive disorder, dissociative disorder, and depersonalization. By the time he was 15, he had committed arson and killed at least 3 animals. This wasn't enough for him. He wanted to be a serial killer. By April 2013, Marsh was 15 years old and he decided to bring his homicidal ideas to life. His victims were 87-year-old Oliver Northup and his wife, 76-year-old Claudia Maupin. On April 13, 2013, Marsh, who was now 15 years old, set out to find his victims. He had planned the murders extensively. He taped the bottom of his shoes so that he would not leave behind footprints, and he wore gloves to avoid leaving fingerprints or DNA. He also wore all-black clothing and a black face mask and armed himself with a 6-inch buck knife. In the early mornings of April 14th, Marsh went out and checked between 40 to 50 homes for any open doors or windows. According to his confession, he finally found Maupin and Northup's condo. They had an open window and he sliced the screen to enter the house. According to him, he saw the couple sleeping and stood over them for about 10 minutes, deciding how he would kill them. It was there that Maupin woke up, saw Marsh, and started screaming. Marsh stabbed her in the torso repeatedly. As she was being stabbed to death, Maupin was begging Marsh to stop, but that motivated him even more. He stabbed her 67 times before stabbing Northup 61 times from his head to his legs. Marsh continued to stab the couple long after they were dead. He then brutally mutilated their body. He disemboweled the 2 of them, tried to take Maupin's eye out, and pulled fat out of her leg and torso. He cut open Northup's forehead and put a drinking glass in his stomach and a cell phone in Maupin's stomach. After he was done, he left the home with a baseball bat looking for his next victim. He never found one. Northup and Maupin were discovered by their daughter and the police after they were absent from church. Marsh's DNA was not at the murder scene as well. Marsh was only arrested after a friend he bragged to went to the police about what he heard. He said that Marsh showed him the souvenirs he kept from the murders.
I just know that somebody broke into this old couple's house and stabbed them, killed them.
Why are you ruining my life? Why should I? I'm not ruining your life. I'm trying to solve a homicide, a double homicide.
On June 17th, Marsh was brought in for questioning, and after 3 hours and 30 minutes of denying his crimes, he confessed to what he did.
That night, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to do it. I lost control.
He also described to the investigator how he would have killed him if he was his victim.
I feel empathy for them, and whether I like that or not, it's just like, I want to hurt people. I want to kill people, but I don't want to want that. I wish it wasn't that way.
Marsh was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder with special enhancements. These included intentionally killing more than one person, demonstrating exceptional depravity in the killings, and inflicting torture in the commission of murders. His trial began when he was 17 years old, and he was tried as an adult. Marsh smirked and laughed at some point during his first appearance in court. Because his attorneys argued that he was not guilty by reason of insanity, a series of psychological tests were taken. One of them was the psychopathy checklist. Marsh scored 35.8 out of 40, which was higher than Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy, and John Wayne Gacy, 3 of the most prolific serial killers in America. The trial lasted 5 weeks, and at the end of it, Marsh was found guilty on all charges and sentenced to 52 years to life in prison. In 2021, his parole was denied because he wasn't rehabilitated, and mostly because the depravity of his crimes meant that society was in danger if he was ever let out. Where Daniel Marsh acted on his own accord, the same cannot be said for Conrad Schaefer, who would do anything to feel like he was cool, including killing people.
I was just like a pause that I serve families that I've heard.
Conrad Schaefer was 15 years old when he met Victoria Rios, Juan Sebastian Muriel, and David Damas. This friendship would turn into something that would terrorize Osceola County for 2 weeks. A few months after the group met, Conrad Schaefer's father had given him a firearm, even though he wasn't old enough to legally own one. For some reason, he thought this was a pass to commit gruesome crimes in the community. In 2013, Schaefer and his friends went on a shooting spree that lasted over 2 weeks. For those weeks, Schaefer shot up more than 20 homes, leaving multiple people paralyzed and traumatized with his actions. Many of the homes carried memories of the shootings with bullet holes in walls and doors. 2 homes were particularly devastated because of the actions of Schaefer and his friends. On June 26, 2013, Schaefer was driving down the street in his father's car looking for someone to attack. Armed with the firearm, he saw 17-year-old David Guerrero walking to the bus stop on the way to work around 6 a.m. He then shot Guerrero because he thought it would be fun to kill a person for no apparent reason. On June 6th, Schaefer and his friends planned to kill another victim. 22-year-old Eric Rupnerine was in his home that night when Victoria Rios, the female of the group, showed up at his door and offered him sex for $300. She lured him to the door, and that was when Damas rushed into the home and robbed Rupnerine. It looks like this was the only intention until Schaefer shot him in the face and stabbed him multiple times while he was still breathing. They left him dead with a butcher knife on his body. They stole an Xbox, a TV, and $300 and left the home. Schaefer and his friends were arrested and charged with murder, home invasion, and grand theft. All the teens were tried separately and in court. Schaefer was listless and showed no remorse as the court proceedings went on. Schaefer droned on in his apology without any emotion. He asked for the forgiveness of the victims' families and said he wished it never happened. Schaefer showed no emotion as he was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years in prison. Next, we examine the disturbing case of Jesse Osborne, a teenager whose actions brought unimaginable tragedy to a quiet community.
I don't exactly know why I did this, but I just ask that you give me hope for a future and get me help, because I do need help.
On September 28, 2016, Townsville Elementary School joined the list of American schools that suffered shootings. The perpetrator was 14-year-old Jesse Osborne. Osborne had been homeschooled after he was expelled from Townsville Elementary School for bringing a hatchet and machete to school in the early months of 2016. He had also said that he wanted to kill at least 50 to 60 people and wanted to be like the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooter, Adam Lanza. Hours before the school shooting, Osborne shot and killed his father before driving to the school in a black pickup truck with a .40 caliber pistol. He crashed the fence and started firing into the air with the pistol while shouting, "I hate my life." He then jumped the fence and started firing at students for 12 seconds until a volunteer firefighter stopped him after his gun jammed. One student was shot in the foot and a female teacher was shot in the shoulder. The third student, 6-year-old Jacob Hall, was shot in the leg. This gunshot wound caused massive blood loss and Hall went into cardiac arrest. Even though he went through extensive surgery, Jacob Hall passed away on October 1st, 2016. Jesse Osborne was arrested and charged with 2 counts of murder for the deaths of Hall and his father, 3 counts of attempted murder, and 5 counts of possessing a weapon. Because of the levity of his actions, he faced life in prison without parole. At first, Jesse Osborne pleaded not guilty to all his charges. However, 3 months after the mass shootings, Osborne pleaded guilty to all charges and waived the right to a jury trial because his lawyer convinced him that this was his best bet. Osborne was arrested as an adult, and on November 13, 2019, Osborne was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole and 30 years for attempted murder charges.
I don't exactly know why I did this, but I just ask that you give me hope for a future and get me help, because I do need help.
In court, Osborne showed no emotion, but at the time he was called to speak, he cried as he asked the judge to give him hope for the future. He never exactly apologized for what he did before he was led away.
I hope that after you read this, you will understand that Jeff was more than a byproduct of a school shooting, but a father, husband, son, brother, uncle, and friend.
Osborne's uncle also spoke about his brother, Jeff Osborne, in court, talking about how he would be missed. The mother of Jacob Hall also talked about how she forgave Osborne but would never forget what he did to her son. Jesse Osborne is incarcerated in the Kirkland Correctional Institution. From one chilling case to another, we turn to John Totherow, a man whose actions defied comprehension and revealed a sinister side of humanity. In May 2022, police officers were called to a home in York County, South Carolina, because they believed an armed intruder was present. The house belonged to Kenny and Alethea Totherow and their 14-year-old son, John Totherow. On the unfortunate day, Kenny kissed his wife and son goodbye, not knowing that this was the last day anything would be peaceful in his life again. He had checked in with his wife around lunch and told her he would see her later. In a later interview, he said, "Little did I know all hell would break loose in my home." When Kenny was on his way back home, he was horrified to see that a SWAT team had shut down his entire street. To make matters worse, he was informed that his home was why this happened. What he was told completely turned his life upside down. His wife, Alethea, had been shot 12 times and had died from those wounds. What made this even worse was that his son, 14-year-old John, was the one who killed his wife. Finding out that his son had murdered his mother changed his life completely. John himself was charged with murder and arrested as a juvenile. The motive for the crime was never given. Initially, John's name was also withheld from the public. By September 2023, John was already 16 when he was finally tried as an adult due to a complicated plea deal he took. The solicitor's office reduced John's charges to voluntary manslaughter and possession of a weapon during the commission of a violent crime.
How could you still love your son? Very simple. My son was a gift from God.
During his sentencing, his father pleaded with the court to give his son a second chance at life and asked that he should not get life in prison. In court, Kenny Totherow talked about how his son was a gift. He said that he felt that people would ask him why he still loved his son after what he did to his mother. However, he simply said that he did because God gave him his son. While John didn't say anything in court, he looked really small as he was led through the court proceedings. In the clips that were available of him, he had an expression that could be interpreted as fear. Ultimately, John was sentenced to 28 years in prison. According to the judge, he could only be released before his sentence is up if he served up to 85%. His father expressed the pain of knowing that he'll never be able to go to a game with his son or even see him outside again since he was almost 60 at the time of his son's sentencing. Kenny hugged his son tightly before he was led away. As the haunting story of one crime concludes, the next brings us to Michael Hernandez, a name etched in infamy for an act so shocking it left an entire community reeling.
Was being treated for bipolar disorder and schizophrenia.
And I wanted to apologize to his family, to his mother and his father, because I didn't always feel this way. I'm sorry for what I did to him, and it hurts me how senseless it was because he was always such a good friend to me. And I wanted to apologize to his family.
14-year-old Michael Hernandez had a passion for heavy metal music and horror movies, which, while not uncommon among teenagers, was where the similarities between him and countless others ended. What Michael confessed to his childhood best friend, 13-year-old Andre Martin, in the summer of 2003 was disturbing. He shared with Andre his desire to become a serial killer, stating that he was studying murderers' mental illnesses. At the time, Andre believed the comment to be in jest and had no cause for concern. Little did he know that Michael was planning a deadly assault against him and their other friend, 13-year-old Jaime Goff.
Today is not about how this young man passed away, but instead it is a celebration of how he lived and the lasting impression that he made on our community.
Andre Martin is all grown up. He's a Miami-Dade cop.
On February 2, 2004, Michael made his move on Andre. The two teens met in the Southwood Middle School teachers' parking lot, where they were not allowed inside without a teacher present. However, Michael and Andre disregarded this rule and made their way inside.
You're listening to the voice of convicted killer Michael Hernandez talking on the phone from jail.
Once they were inside the building, Michael Hernandez lured Andre into the second-floor bathroom and tried to get him into a stall with him. Although they had often snuck into the school before hours, Andre later said something about this day seemed different. It was a warm day outside, but Michael was dressed in a windbreaker, raising suspicions in Andre's mind. This unusual behavior caught Andre off guard, and he couldn't help but wonder what was behind Michael's strange attire.
Prosecutors will argue he should spend the rest of his life in prison.
As they entered the bathroom, an even more bizarre event took place. Michael put on a hat, adding to the mystery surrounding his intentions. Andre was puzzled, but he wasn't sure if this strange behavior was a sign of danger or simply a whim on Michael's part. Just when Andre was about to decide whether he would follow Michael into the stall, the bell rang, signaling the start of the school day. Andre quickly left the bathroom.
With that being said, nothing comes in the way of the bittersweet memories he has of Jaime Goff. His best friend was murdered.
Despite the failed attempt on February 2nd, Michael remained undeterred. His determination to kill was unwavering. The following day, on February 3rd, Michael, dressed in his windbreaker and equipped with a hat and latex gloves, lured Jaime Goff into the bathroom, ensuring they were alone.
For the stabbing death of Jaime Goff in the bathroom of Southwood Middle School. At the time, both he and the victim were 14 years old.
Inside the bathroom, Michael's true intentions were revealed. With Jaime facing away, he pulled out a 4-inch serrated blade. As Jaime turned around, he realized that his life was in danger. Michael, fueled by rage and cruelty, covered Jaime's mouth with his hand. Unable to escape, Jaime futilely waved his hands at the blade, slicing open his hands. In an act of unimaginable brutality, Michael raised the knife and repeatedly sliced Jaime's throat, cutting his windpipe and jugular.
Jaime Goff was stabbed to death in a bathroom stall at Southwood Middle School. His classmate Michael Hernandez confessed to stashing the knife in a backpack.
The horrifying scene continued as Michael used his knife to poke into Jaime's face and head, ensuring that he was indeed dead. Satisfied with the outcome, Michael disposed of one pair of gloves down the toilet and donned another. He then washed the blood from his hands, jacket, and even his face in the sink. Blood was splattered across the floor and stall, and the body of Jaime lay lifeless on the ground.
For his resentencing hearing, his attorney, Manny Hernandez, guiding him through that first part of testimony.
Authorities were immediately notified of the murder, and an intense investigation was launched. The focus quickly shifted to Michael Hernandez, who was identified as a prime suspect. After Michael was taken to the police department, he waived his Miranda rights and confessed to murdering Jaime and trying to kill Andre one day earlier.
From his father today, also several jailhouse calls made between he and his father, where his father actually plays music that he requests for him.
Michael was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, one for the brutal killing of Jaime and the other for attempting to take the life of Andre just one day earlier. One of the key aspects of Michael's case was the conflicting expert opinions surrounding his competency to stand trial. A court-appointed expert testified that Michael did not have a mental illness that should impact his competency. However, the defense hired a psych who claimed that Michael did have symptoms that indicated he had paranoid schizophrenia.
As Jaime Goff's family and also to another friend of his who he had planned to kill the day before Goff died.
During the trial, the defense did their best to prove Michael's insanity at the time of the crime. They presented evidence, including witness testimony and medical records, to support their claim that Michael was mentally unstable at the time of the offenses. However, despite their efforts, the jurors ultimately found Michael guilty of murder and attempted murder.
Yes, sir.
I mean, you talk about serial killers?
Yes, sir.
You talk about violence?
Yes, sir.
Why?
Miami-Dade Circuit Judge John Schlesinger delivered the final judgment, sentencing Michael to life in prison without parole, the maximum punishment available. Judge Schlesinger also imposed an additional 30 years for the attempted murder of Andre Martin, bringing the total sentence to a staggering 30 years to life.
A female over the phone. So I didn't know what to talk about. My life as being, incarcerated, it's very mundane. So I tried to think about...
By taking the life of a close friend and leaving Jaime alone to die, Michael shattered the lives of not only his own family, but the entire Goff family as well. Jorge Goff, Jaime's father, expressed deep sorrow and confusion regarding Michael's actions. While Jorge and his loved ones have forgiven Michael, they still have countless questions. How could someone so young commit such a heinous crime? What led Michael down this path? These questions continue to haunt Jorge, leaving him with a heavy heart.
Did you ever see this list before? Yes. That's the hit list. That's disturbing, isn't it? It is disturbing.
Michael declined to speak during the court proceedings when asked if he wanted to address the court. His mother, Kathy Hernandez, however, expressed her remorse and acknowledged her son's mental illness. She emphasized the need for understanding and support, stating that her son did not deserve the unforgiving sentence of life in prison without parole.
The center in his prison jumpsuit, he does say in that profile that he's been locked up age 14.
Despite her plea, Michael's sentence of life imprisonment without parole remained unchanged. He appealed this decision, arguing that it is unconstitutional for a juvenile to receive such a harsh punishment. His defense said Michael basically had the juvenile death penalty and that he was locked away to die as a child.
Oh, why don't you practice your weekend learning how to cry?
Oh my God.
In 2016, the United States Supreme Court ruled that juveniles could no longer be automatically sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. This decision paved the way for a retrial in the case of Michael Hernandez. However, during Michael's retrial in 2016, which lasted 3 days, it became clear that during his years behind bars for murdering his best friend, he had not changed. The prosecution presented phone calls Michael made from prison where he spoke about his admiration for serial killers like Jeffrey Dahmer and mass shooters like Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris, who committed the infamous Columbine massacre.
How'd you muster up those tears?
I feel horrible about what I did.
Yeah, so horrible to say, I may have to stab myself.
Michael was sentenced to life in prison without parole again. Although he faced the prospect of spending the rest of his life behind bars, his life wouldn't last much longer. In August 2021, at the age of 31, Michael passed away in prison due to a heart condition and natural causes. According to the autopsy report, Michael was morbidly obese at the time of his death. At just 5'10" and 285 pounds, he exhibited severe cardiac dysrhythmia.
Many people, that is a vitamin for me, a vitamin for my soul, a vitamin to be strong and continuing work for.
Jaime's parents, Jorge and Maria Goff, sat with 7 News to share their thoughts and feelings about Michael's passing. Maria, overcome with emotion, admitted that she couldn't stop crying upon hearing the news. Jorge, on the other hand, was shocked by the revelation, expressing disbelief and sorrow over their son's murderer's death.
So amazing. Now there's a fresh look at the sign out there.
Despite the tragic circumstances, Jamie's parents demonstrated remarkable grace and composure throughout the interview. They acknowledged that Michael's death was saddening, even as they expressed their disappointment that he had passed away despite all they had been through. As parents themselves, they knew the pain and loss that the family was experiencing.
God made us here, and we're not supposed to be killing each other.
Now at 6:30, the parents of Jaime Goff, who was killed in 2004 by a fellow classmate.
The news of Michael's death prompted Jorge and Maria to contemplate what Jaime's life could have been like had he still been alive. Jorge expressed his hope that Jaime would have pursued a successful career, married, and formed a loving family. Maria, too, thought of her son every day and expressed her desire to reunite with her son one day. We now explore the case of Nicholas Browning, a teenager whose shocking crime shattered his own family.
A familiar face urged forgiveness for the 15-year-old accused of murdering his parents and younger brothers.
6 years after he methodically moved through his Cockeysville home, murdering his parents and 2 younger brothers, Nicholas Browning made a bid to get his multiple life sentences.
Nicholas Browning was born in Cockeysville, Maryland, a suburb of Baltimore. He was raised in a loving household with his parents, John and Tamara, and his younger brothers, Gregory and Benjamin. Tamara was a stay-at-home mom, while John was an attorney. The Browning family seemed to embody the American dream to the outside world.
His attempt to show remorse any more than the judge who denied his motion. Coffin says he planned the murders like a professional hitman.
Growing up, Nicholas was an honor student and Boy Scout. He excelled in academics and extracurricular activities, playing varsity golf and lacrosse at Delaney High School. But as time went on, dark clouds began to form behind his seemingly perfect facade.
The sight drove home the loss of 11-year-old Ben Browning and his 14-year-old brother Greg. Police say older brother Nick killed both boys in their Cockeysville home Friday night.
On February 1st, 2008, 1 week before Nicholas turned 16, tragedy struck. Nicholas was supposed to be sleeping over at a friend's house, but instead, he snuck out of the house in the middle of the night. Little did he know he was about to embark on a horrifying journey that would forever change his life.
Why would I jeopardize? You put money into it. I have a very large, or had to have whatever, inheritance coming to me, regardless if there's insurance money involved or not.
Upon returning home, Nicholas used one of his father's guns to carry out a heinous crime. Without hesitation, he shot and killed his mother, father, and 2 brothers. 2 days later, Nicholas confessed to the horrific crimes. He was arrested and charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder, denying him bail. The details of his confession painted a disturbing picture of a family plagued by abuse and violence. Nicholas claimed that his father, John, had physically and sexually abused him for years, leaving him emotionally and physically scarred.
They arrived on scene and located all 4 members of the family inside the home. Nicholas's father and prominent real estate lawyer of the firm Royston, Mueller, McLean, and Reed.
However, the prosecution had a different theory. The prosecution alleged that Nicholas committed these murders to gain control over his life and exert dominance over his family. They argued that Nicholas killed his parents because he didn't want anyone telling him what to do, and that his decision to shoot his brothers was motivated by his desire to secure the entire inheritance for himself.
The same teen who murdered his entire family.
One would need to look, of course, at the person, what he was then and what he's become now.
As the trial unfolded, several members of Nicholas's loved ones, including his grandfather, pleaded for leniency. The family claimed that Nicholas was the victim of physical and mental abuse and that his actions were a result of years of suffering. They argued that Nicholas should be given a chance to reform and rehabilitate rather than face the harshest possible punishment.
Why would I jeopardize? You put money into it. I have a very large, or had to have whatever, inheritance coming to me, regardless if there's insurance money involved or not.
After intense negotiations, the prosecution and defense teams finally reached a plea deal. In January 2009, Nicholas pleaded guilty to 4 counts of first-degree murder and was sentenced to 4 life terms in prison, with 2 life terms to be served consecutively. Under the terms of the agreement, Nicholas would be eligible for parole in 2031 after serving 23 years of his sentence.
Then fly it over prison fences and into the prison yard where it would be collected by another inmate.
Despite his guilty plea, Nicholas attempted to appeal for a sentence reduction in 2014. However, the courts denied his request. Today, Nicholas is serving his sentence at Cumberland, Maryland's Western Correctional Institution. Next, we examine the chilling case of Caden Smith, a teen killer who unleashed a wave of violence, leaving devastation in his path.
Detectives also obtained this photo from early November of what police say appears to be Smith holding a handgun and a GPS monitor around his ankle.
Charges in the shooting on the south side of Indianapolis. A Metro police officer found the bodies of 3 men in October of 2021, including Michael James Jr., who you see right here in these pictures.
On October 21st, 2018, 18-year-old Joseph Thomas, 22-year-old Michael James, and 17-year-old Abdullah Mubarak were found shot dead inside a vehicle in a grassy area near I-465. This triple homicide sent shockwaves through the city, with fears that a serial killer was on the loose. However, these theories were quickly debunked, and the prime suspect in the investigation became 16-year-old Caden Smith, a friend of the deceased young man.
That this is a dangerous individual and he belongs in jail.
As she prepares for another holiday without her son, she's hoping this time Smith will remain in jail.
Joseph Thomas's mother told police investigators that her son had mentioned plans to meet with his friend Caden before he left home. This revelation sparked suspicion and led the investigators to focus on Caden as a potential suspect. Upon examining Caden's electronic devices, a search on his cell phone for homicide attorney cost was discovered. The searches raised even more red flags about Caden.
An arrest Smith in the weeks after the killing was faulty, and the evidence has been tossed out, much to the dismay of the families of Joseph Thomas and Michael James.
Through meticulous investigation, it was evident that Caden Smith had planned this heinous crime meticulously. He lured his victims to a secluded area near the interstate, promising to show them a gun conversion device known as a Glock switch. Little did they know, Caden had sinister intentions.
Shootings happened along a path near Meridian Street and 465 on the south side. They say victims after showing them how to use a gun.
Caden took the three men there under the pretense that he was going to demonstrate this lock switch, which he claimed would enable a semi-automatic to fire like a machine gun. However, what unfolded that night was cold-blooded murder. Despite the setbacks, the investigation ultimately leads to Caden Smith's arrest. When taken into custody, police found a Glock in his possession. After conducting a thorough examination, it was determined to be the murder weapon. The evidence was undeniable.
Charged with killing 3 people found near Southern Plaza a year ago is on electronic monitoring tonight at home. A judge ordered Caden Smith to be released on bond.
His defense team managed to persuade a judge to throw out crucial evidence, including cell phones and drugs. They argued that the search warrant was invalid and yielded little to no evidence connecting him to the triple homicide.
Caden Smith killed Michael James, Abdullah Mubarak, and Joseph Thomas. They say he was 16 years old at the time he was charged as an adult.
The trial finally began on August 19, 2024, more than 3 years after Caden's initial arrest. After a grueling 5-day trial, Caden was found guilty of 3 counts of murder, 2 counts of felony murder, 2 counts of robbery, and multiple drug and gun-related offenses. On September 17, 2024, 1 month after the trial, Caden was sentenced to 189 years in prison by a Marion County judge. Prosecutor Ryan Mears, speaking on behalf of the prosecution, stated that justice had been served for the 3 victims. Mears emphasized the significant sentence imposed by the judge, calling it a testament to holding violent individuals accountable for their actions. Next, we uncover the shocking case of Robert and Michael Beaver, 2 brothers whose horrifying actions tore apart their family and left those around them searching for answers.
Broken Arrow, Oklahoma has 1, maybe 2 murders a year, but tonight this community is reeling from 5, the worst crime anyone here can remember.
In 2015, the quiet town of Broken Arrow, Oklahoma was rocked by a shocking crime involving the Beaver family. Daniel and April Beaver were a seemingly ordinary couple, raising their 5 children in a modest home. But beneath this facade, a darker truth lurked. The Beavers were a close-knit unit, with Robert, Michael, Crystal, Daniel, Christopher, Victoria, and Autumn making up their brood. Those who knew the family described them as quiet and withdrawn, preferring to keep to themselves. The children, homeschooled by their parents, were rarely seen interacting with other children in the neighborhood.
Don't yet have a motive, one calling this the worst single criminal event in this town's history.
On July 21, 2015, Robert and Michael Beaver collected body armor and knives, hatching a plan to carry out a horrific act of violence. These 2 brothers were plotting to murder their family the very next day. Around 11:30 p.m., Robert and Michael enacted their deadly plan, starting with a horrifying act of violence. They slit their 13-year-old sister Crystal's throat, leaving her fighting for her life. Crystal fought against her brothers, escaping the bedroom and running for the front door, but her siblings were not about to let her escape. They dragged her back inside the house and unleashed an even more brutal assault on her. The extent of Crystal's injuries were horrifying, with her internal organs almost spilling out. Incredibly, she survived this brutal assault, but the rest of the family was not so lucky. Robert and Michael went on a rampage, brutally murdering their parents and siblings. Robert, in a fit of rage, fatally stabbed his mother, April, a staggering 48 times. While Christopher and Victoria Beaver were hiding in the bathroom during the assault, using a clever ruse, Michael pretended to be scared and a victim, knocking on the door and pleading for help. Christopher decided to open the door and allow Michael inside, thinking it was a matter of safety. Instead of seeking safety, Michael turned on his unsuspecting siblings, fatally stabbing each of them over 20 times. With his bloodlust seemingly sated, Michael turned to his father's home office, where his younger brother Daniel was hiding. Once again, he employed the same ruse, pretending to be a victim chased by Robert. Daniel opened the door, allowing Michael to enter. As Michael stepped into his father's office, he turned towards Robert, their other brother, and uttered chilling words. "He's all yours." In a moment of pure madness, Robert turned his knife on his younger brother Daniel and stabbed him in the stomach, chest, head, and back. Daniel Beaver woke up and found himself face to face with his son, Robert. In a matter of seconds, he lunged at his father's throat and stabbed his father repeatedly, 28 times, leaving him lifeless. After committing these heinous crimes, Robert and his brother Michael fled the scene, fleeing out the back door and into the woods that surrounded the house. They knew that the authorities would soon be on their trail, and they had no intentions of getting caught. Daniel Beaver, as he died, called 911. As police officers walked towards the front door, they noticed a pool of blood on the porch. With their hearts pounding, they knocked repeatedly on the door, calling out for any survivors. After an eternity, the officers heard a faint voice calling for help. Breaking down the door, they entered to find 13-year-old Crystal lying in a puddle of her blood. She was rushed to the nearest hospital, where doctors worked frantically to save her life. When Crystal was stable, she identified her brothers as the assailants. In addition to Crystal, only 2-year-old Autumn managed to escape the relentless violence, miraculously escaping with her life. But the rest of the family was gone, their lives ripped away in the most horrific way imaginable. Robert and Michael were arrested at 12:18 a.m. Officers apprehended the brothers using a canine unit after they were discovered hiding in a bush. They had each been charged with 5 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of assault and battery with intent to kill. Michael, at 16, was tried as an adult, a decision that sparked controversy among legal professionals. His attorney argued that charging him as an adult was unconstitutional, stating that if convicted, he would be doomed to die in prison. Such an outcome, the attorney claimed, was effectively the same as a death sentence. The attorney contended that there was abuse in the Beaver household. However, no concrete evidence was provided to show that there was abuse within the Beaver household. Initially, Robert and Michael pleaded not guilty, maintaining their innocence in the face of overwhelming odds. While incarcerated, Robert dared to take his own life. However, fate intervened when a guard stumbled upon him in the nick of time. Robert pleaded guilty to all charges and was given 5 life sentences without parole, as well as an additional life term. Michael's trial began in April 2018. After 1 month of deliberation, the jury found him guilty and sentenced him to 5 life sentences with parole. Robert, who should have been safely locked away behind bars, attempted to attack 2 prison officers in the day room in 2019. This incident resulted in him receiving 3 more life terms, bringing his total amount of life sentences to 9. Robert and Michael are serving their sentences at the Joseph Harp Correctional Center and the Lexington Correctional Center, respectively, in Lexington, Oklahoma. The chilling actions of these cold-blooded teen killers leave us questioning how such darkness can exist at such a young age. But the story doesn't end here. There are even more shocking cases and jaw-dropping courtroom moments waiting in the next video on screen. Don't miss it. Watch now to uncover the next chapter of these unimaginable crimes.